Hello and welcome. It's Wednesday, the 21st of May. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. President Park Geun-hye is expected to start the process of identifying a new prime minister and carry out a major cabinet reshuffle. Now she's back in Korea following a short trip to the United Arab Emirates. South Korean Cardinal Andrew Yeom-soo-jung will visit a North Korean industrial complex in North Korea today amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. Plus, the president of Nigeria says twin bombings that killed around 120 people in the central city of Jos do not imply Nigeria is in a state of disintegration. Our top story this morning, Korea has marked the installation of a nuclear reactor at a power plant in the United Arab Emirates. It's the first atomic reactor Korea has developed and exported to a foreign country. In honor of the occasion, President Park Geun-hye was in the Gulf nation Tuesday to attend an installation ceremony. Connie Kim reports.
For the first time ever, a Korean nuclear reactor will be installed overseas in the United Arab Emirates. It's part of a $19 billion contract Korea won to build 4 nuclear plants in the Gulf nation by the year 2020. To mark the occasion, President Park Geun-hye and the UAE's Deputy Prime Minister Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan attended a ceremony at the Baraka nuclear plant site Tuesday, some 300 kilometers west of the capital, Abu Dhabi. The presidential office in Seoul says the 533-ton reactor, which recently passed the UAE nuclear reactor's safety tests, symbolizes the global recognition of Korea's nuclear reactor technology and safety. Seoul and Abu Dhabi also signed 3 memorandums of understanding, through which Korea hopes to create job opportunities for young Koreans in the Arab nation. The MOUs include the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation hiring some 10 Korean engineering graduates each year, and the 2 countries jointly fostering their service industries in the nuclear sector. Sitting down with Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan after the ceremony, President Park discussed 2-way cooperation in the areas of energy, construction, medicine, and finance.
특히 그 바라카 원전의 경우는 그 원전 건설이라는 그런 것을 뛰어넘어서 우리 두 나라 사이에 앞으로 그 100년간 그 어떤 동반자 관계를 이렇게 돈독하게 가져가는 핵심 사업으로서의 상징성도 매우 크다고 생각을 합니다.
Despite the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, officials say President Park made the short 2-day trip in consideration of future economic cooperation between the 2 nations. Before heading home, she met with members of Korea's ARC military unit, which has been deployed to the UAE since 2011 as part of Seoul-Abu Dhabi military cooperation. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
President Park is back in Korea following her trip to the UAE, arriving around 3 hours ago. She won't have any time to rest, though, as she's now expected to start the process of identifying a new prime minister and carry out a major cabinet reshuffle. Pundits are looking carefully into who will be the president's candidate for prime minister, with the current PM, Jung Hong-won, offering to resign to take responsibility for the government's lax response to the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Speculation is rife that an announcement on the Prime Minister could come as early as this week, as it's already been 3 weeks since Jung offered to step down. While there are calls for a sweeping cabinet shake-up, the ministers of Oceans and Fisheries, Public Administration and Education, those most responsible for the handling of the disaster, are most likely to face the chop. Korean lawmakers have started their own process of questioning the government's handling of the ferry disaster. The Prime Minister, Jung Hong-won, who offered to resign, like I said, over the disaster, was in the hot seat at the National Assembly on Tuesday. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
It's been more than a month since the Sewol-ho ferry capsized and sunk in waters off Korea's southwestern coast, and the nation is still seeking answers about what went wrong that day and in the days leading up to it. Lawmakers opened their first plenary session on Tuesday to ask those very questions, and Prime Minister Chung Hong-won found himself on the receiving end. Ruling's Henry Party lawmaker Yoo Byung-eun questioned whether the captain and crew of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry were qualified for their duties.
The vessel's captain and the crew were the first ones to leave the capsizing ship. What do you think of this?
The captain should have taken responsibility of all passengers until the end. The Korea Coast Guard was also hasty in the initial stages of the rescue operations. They weren't able to get onto the ship as the ferry enlisted.
The lawmaker said he agreed with President Park Geun-hye over dismantling the Korea Coast Guard for its failed rescue mission, but emphasized that its role in guarding Korea's Dokdo Island and clamping down on illegal Chinese fishing boats in Korean waters should continue. Lawmaker Moon Hee-sang of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy asked whether a cabinet reshuffle was imminent.
We are aware of the cabinet reshuffle. We all feel the responsibility. But for now, we will focus on handling the aftermath of the ferry disaster.
Lawmaker Moon added that if a control tower for safety is set up under the Prime Minister's office, an efficient communication system was necessary between the central and local governments.
Lawmakers will conduct a second day of plenary questioning on Wednesday to uncover more details about the ferry accident and to determine whether to appoint a special prosecutor for an investigation. Jyeonggi-do, ARIRANG News.
And turning now to the latest on the prosecution's probe into the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, the man who authorities believe could potentially unlock many of the mysteries around the ferry accident continues to defy orders to come in for questioning. Our Sohn Jung-in reports.
The de facto owner of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, Yoo Byung-eun, has once again defied orders to come in for questioning over his possible involvement in the accident. The Incheon court that will decide whether to issue an arrest warrant for Yoo had asked to speak with him Tuesday, but it was a no-show, just as it was last Friday when prosecutors asked for him to appear. Yoo is wanted for questioning on tax evasion and embezzlement charges. The court is expected to rule on arrest warrant request by prosecutors Tuesday or Wednesday. If and when it's issued, prosecutors plan to force their way into the religious compound Yoo's family owns in Gyeonggi-do province. The 73-year-old is believed to be hiding inside, although prosecutors say he may also be staying at the home of one of his supporters. The Yoo family founded a religious cult known as the Salvation Sect, and about 1,000 believers have set up a human barricade. The Yoo family founded a religious cult known as the Salvation Sect, and about 1,000 believers have set up a human barricade around the religious compound in Gyeonggi-do to block authorities from entering. Raising the stakes of a confrontation, prosecutors and police have deployed over 4,000 special forces and police nearby. Yoo's family is also wanted for questioning, but they have also defied orders to do so. Yoo's first son, Yoo Byung-eun, was reportedly seen at Incheon International Airport on April 19th, just 3 days after the Sewol-ho ferry accident. He had reportedly purchased a ticket to France but didn't get on a plane. Prosecutors at the time had already banned Yoo from leaving the country. His whereabouts are still unknown. Yoo Byung-eun was involved in the day-to-day operations of the company that owned the Sewol-ho ferry, and there is currently a warrant out for his arrest. Early Tuesday morning, the National Tax Service said it has started the process of freezing more than $19 million worth of Yoo Byung-eun's assets for tax collection purposes, although prosecutors are also looking into ways to compensate the victims of Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. Sohn Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now, in what will be an historic visit to North Korea by a Korean Roman Catholic leader, Cardinal Andrew Yom-soo-jung of Seoul is set to visit the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex located in North Korea. The Cardinal and 6 other priests plan to tour the complex on this Wednesday. The Roman Catholic leaders say they will meet with South Korean business officials and pray for peace and reconciliation between the two Koreas. It will be the first time for a South Korean cardinal to visit North Korea. There had been some speculation Cardinal Yom's visit would be a precursor for Pope Francis to also visit the communist nation when he comes to Seoul in August, but a source within the Catholic Church quashed the rumour, saying the Pope has no plans to travel to the north. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have pledged to forge closer bilateral ties amid festering tensions with the US. The leaders met in Shanghai Tuesday on the opening day of joint military drills that are likely to draw disapproval from Seoul, as they overlap with South Korea's recently expanded air defense identification zone. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Meeting in Shanghai Tuesday, Presidents Xi and Putin agreed to strengthen their economic and military ties. They also held in-depth talk about North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. Praising the tightening military ties between the two sides, President Putin said he was convinced Moscow and Beijing could forge a strong strategic partnership and that bilateral military cooperation was developing very well. Putin's visit to China coincided with the beginning of the two countries' joint naval exercises, Joint Sea 2014. The drills have raised red flags in Seoul as they overlap with South Korea's expanded air defense identification zone. Neither Moscow or Beijing notified the South Korean government prior to its announcement. It's the first time an international military exercise has taken place within Korean waters since the expansion of the air defense zone last December. On the business front, the two leaders failed to narrow their differences on a natural gas supply agreement worth of $400 billion. A 30-year contract between the Russian state-controlled fuel supplier and Chinese National Petroleum Corporation was left unsigned as both sides couldn't agree on a price at which Russia would supply gas. Moscow wants to find new buyers for its gas outside of Europe. This is because U.S. allies in Europe have imposed sanctions against Moscow for its annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. In regards to the security situation on the Korean Peninsula, both sides said they were concerned about North Korea's nuclear program and the simmering political and military tensions between the two Koreas. China and Russia stressed the long-stalled six-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization are the only effective way of reaching a deal everyone is happy with. They called on all parties to do more to secure peace and stability in the region. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
From this July, Korean consumers will be able to use their online identification PIN number in the offline world. The Ministry of Security and Public Administration says it will introduce a new way of confirming a person's identity using so-called IPIN numbers instead of resident registration numbers, which are the equivalent of social security numbers in the US. The government's move comes on the heels of a revised bill regarding personal data protection that prohibits the collection and exploitation of resident registration numbers from August. The Korean government came under intense fire earlier this year for the country's biggest ever personal data leak. Now, a lot of work needs to be done to restore faith in the government following the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. There's no quick fix here either, as recent public opinion polls show that more than 9 out of 10 Koreans believe the public and private sector are plagued by corruption. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
One of President Park Geun-hye's key plans for making the nation a safer place to live is cracking down on corruption in both the government and private sectors. It's an issue the Korean public feels strongly about. In a public opinion survey conducted earlier this month by the Asan Institute for Policy Studies, more than 93% of respondents said corruption was a serious problem. Nearly half thought corruption was a more serious problem than it was a decade ago, and around 80% thought it was a major issue in both the public and private sectors. So is their perception grounded in reality?
Those numbers are going to be a little higher right now because there is such a focus on corruption and the role it played in the recent tragedy. If we ask this question perhaps 2 months, 3 months, 4 months down the line, I think that number would reduce significantly, and by significantly I mean maybe 10 to 15 percentage points.
26% of those surveys said poor law enforcement was a cause of pervasive corruption. Meanwhile, 54% said they were opposed to so-called parachute appointments that allow public sector officials to get jobs in industries they were once charged with regulating.
If the pervasiveness of corruption in Korean society is widely acknowledged as a problem, what then is the solution in addressing it?
Well, the laws, I think, to go after the people who are corrupt and going through, bribery, that are already on the books. The problem is the enforcement. And I think that's where the Park Geun-hye administration is really going to try to focus, is on cracking down when they find instances of it. So it might not be a matter of creating new laws, it's just enforcing the old laws and making sure that the people who take part in that really are come down hard upon so that they don't want to do it again.
Friedhoff added that approximately 1/3 of the current sitting lawmakers in the National Assembly have been embroiled in cases of corruption. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following at this hour. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news centre. Good morning to you, Eunice. Now, yet more violence in Nigeria, this time a devastating double bomb blast in a central city that's killed scores of people.
Hi, Mark, that's right. And it appears 2 car bombs were behind those explosions that rocked a market and a bus terminal in the central city of Jos, reportedly just 30 minutes apart. Eyewitnesses on the ground described the scene as horrifying and the attacks massive, saying bodies and body parts were strewn over what was a bustling market. Nigeria's National Emergency Management Agency said firefighters were still trying to put out the blazes ignited by the blasts. They also put the current death toll at 118, though cautioning that the number could grow in the coming hours. The central region of Nigeria had been a flashpoint for a religious conflict between Muslims to the north and Christians to the south. No group has yet taken responsibility, but Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan blamed Islamist militant group Boko Haram for the strike. Thailand's interim government has proposed a general election on August 3rd after the country's election commission last week said disruptions to the preparatory meetings made it impossible to hold a July poll. The caretaker prime minister said he will meet with the electoral body today to finalize a date as early as next week. He also said he would speak to the army chief as soon as possible to end the political turmoil that has killed 28 people and injured some 700 since protests began November of last year. And on Tuesday, Thailand's military declared martial law to restore peace and order, warning against any additional violent demonstrations. China has warned the United States of jeopardizing military relations by naming and charging 5 Chinese officers with hacking and cyber spying. Beijing's foreign ministry demanded Washington withdraw the indictment, returning the jabs by accusing the U.S. of hypocrisy and double standards. The foreign ministry also summoned U.S. Ambassador to China Max Baucus to lodge a formal complaint as Beijing suspended a joint cybersecurity task force with Washington. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder had earlier explained the unprecedented indictment as an aggressive response against state-sponsored economic espionage that harvested trade secrets to the detriment of U.S. companies. And finally, Libya's election commission said the country will push forward with parliamentary elections on June 25th, amid fears that the country could be spiraling into civil war. A standoff had riddled the country's parliament. Tripoli has accused General Khalifa Haftar of planning to topple the government after his supporters attacked the parliamentary building on Sunday, and his so-called Libyan National Army had called for its suspension. Haftar has denied the charge. The elections would be the first since the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011.
And good morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team, with the KFA inviting the former head coaches of the national team for a luncheon and held a press conference regarding the current World Cup team. The event taking place at the National Training Center in Paju, 6 of the former head coaches of the South Korean national football team got together to offer their words of encouragement. They stated that although the team is the youngest in history at just under 26 years old on average, they have the most experience and should be able to help them in Brazil. They added that their midfield, which consists of players like Ki Sung-young and Lee Chung-young, is the strongest point and hope that they will play with full confidence. And staying with football, but over to the upcoming Asian Dream Cup 2014, which is hosted annually by Park Ji-sung and his JS Foundation. With the Asian Dream Cup 2014 in Indonesia taking place from June 1st to the 2nd in Jakarta, Indonesia, the JS Foundation revealed their star-studded roster for the event. And the roster includes former Italian defender Gianluca Zambrotta, who played for teams like Barcelona, Juventus, and AC Milan. The roster also includes Chung Dae-se, aka the North Korean Wayne Rooney, who currently plays for the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings in the K-League Classic. And shifting over to the Korean Basketball League, where a new commissioner will be chosen on Thursday. And going after the job as the newest commissioner of the KBL will be 64-year-old Kim In-gyu, who is the former president of Korea Broadcast Station, as he has always expressed his desire to serve as the commissioner of the league. Meanwhile, going up against him will be the former KBL commissioner, 78-year-old Kim Young-gi, who previously held the position from November of 2002 to April of 2004. And now over to some Tuesday night's KBO action. The Nexen Heroes beat the Hanwha Eagles 3-1, with the Kia Tigers beating the LG Twins in a high-scoring game 10-7. And the NC Dinos dominated the struggling SK Wyverns 8-2. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Samsung Lions and the Lotte Giants. Of course, going into the game here, we go over to the third inning. Kim Sang-soo grounds out to third, scoring is Lee Ji-young, and it's 1-0 Samsung. 15, two-man on, Park Sung-min drills this ball to deep left field, and there it goes. Gone, a three-run shot, and it's 4-0 Samsung. Not done yet, sixth inning this time. Bases loaded, Park Han-hee singles to right. Two more score, and it's now 6-0. Meanwhile, eighth inning, Lotte Giants with the bases loaded, no out. Luis Jimenez strikes out, 1 out. Choi Jun-suk up next, and he's going to pop out to second base. Infield fly rule in effect, and it's 2 outs. Next batter, Hwang Jae-gyun flies out to center field as they fail to score with their chance. These Samsung Lions never look back as they take this game 7-2, your final score. And finishing things off, Mercedes Racing's Lewis Hamilton, who has been red hot over in the 2014 Formula One season, has been named as the most marketable athlete, according to the annual Sports Pro magazine survey. According to the list, the F1 driver goes from being ranked 7th in the 2013 list to surpassing some of the biggest names in sports like Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, and Usain Bolt. According to the magazine, the survey is based on age, home market, charisma, and quote-unquote willingness to be marketed and crossover appeal. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, the top temperatures in the capital marked the highest of the season at 28.4 degrees Celsius yesterday. And according to East Asian calendar, today is Soman. Farmers start to plant the rice, and summer is starting to set in, but actually feels like summer is in full swing already. And for today, the temperature should be warming well into mid to upper 20s across the nation. And it will get sunnier as the day goes on, so the warmth and the sun should continue throughout the day, which means we'll have high UV level in most areas. So it should be a good idea to wear sun protection items before heading out today. Now, partly to mostly sunny sky is in store over in Gyeonggi-do, and winds and waves should die down a bit compared to yesterday, and the currents in the water should remain slow. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 27, while Daegu will peak at 30, and Gwangju and Busan should climb to 26 and 27 respectively. For other regions, down on Jeju and Daejeon will reach 23 and 27 later in the day. Dokdo should see a high of 19, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 16. Well, that's all for now, but I'll be back with more updates afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jeon. Before we go, just news coming in that another body, that of a female, has been recovered from the accident site of the Sewol-ho ferry sinking. 5 weeks after the sinking, still 16 people remain unaccounted for. The confirmed death toll now 288. And we'll have the latest on that, as well as all the rest of the day's news at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.